Or I'm aware that some of you are joining us from the Middle East or parts of the Far East. So to all of you a bit further east from where we are here in Manchester, good evening. And indeed, for any of you joining us from the Americas regions, from the United States or Canada or Latin America, good morning. Ours is a very, very global program. So we're used to having to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because the sun never sets in our program, as they say. There's always students that are awake somewhere in our program. In any case, as Anthony said, my name is Xavier Duran, and I am the MBA Programs Director here at Alliance Manchester Business School. As such, my responsibilities are over our full suite of MBA programs, and that obviously includes our full-time MBA, which we deliver here from Alliance Manchester Business School in Manchester in the United Kingdom, but also over our suite of professional part-time MBAs. So that includes our Global Mba Program, but also our Global Executive MBA pathway, which we will possibly be focusing quite a bit on today, and also our Kelly Manchester MBA program. So Anthony and Ekaterina asked me to perhaps do a bit of an overview of our projects or our MBAs and focusing perhaps a bit more on the Global Executive MBA. And that is why we actually entitled this session an Executive MBA being right for you, or perhaps just looking at what is most suitable in terms of your profiles and any professional MBAs you might be looking at. And so I will be giving an overview, first of all, of our Global MBA, that's our largest professional MBA, and then I will focus on the Global Executive MBA, looking at the differences that exist between our standard Global MBA and the more specific Global Executive MBA. I will also briefly speak about our Kelly Manchester MBA program, which we deliver in partnership with the Kelly School of Business and Indiana University in the United States. And as Anthony said, I will give you that overview before I pass it on to him to give you a bit more information on our admissions requirements and how you go about applying, if that is something that you're interested in. And indeed as well, we will then close the session by opening it up to any questions that you may have. In the meantime, and as you may have questions during the session, just feel free to drop a line on the chat functionality of this Zoom session, and Ekaterina and Anthony will be more than happy to reply to any questions, or indeed to collate them to ask me at the end of this session. So just to start with, giving you a bit of a background about the institution that I represent, the University of Manchester, and indeed Alliance Manchester Business School, which is part of it. And just to say that ours is quite an old institution, is a very well-established institution, and all our marketing collateral indeed alludes to the fact that we were founded nearly 200 years ago at this stage. We will be celebrating our 200-year anniversary very, very soon, and we're really excited about it. So we were established in 1824, and being such a well-established university, we're also the largest single-site university in the United Kingdom. Why do we need to caveat that? Why don't we just simply say that we are the largest university in the United Kingdom? Well, because that would not be completely accurate. There's a couple of universities that are, by number of students, slightly larger than ours. One is the University of London, but University of London is simply a system of federated institutions. So in essence, you would have the likes of the London School of Economics or London Business School, or you would have also London School of Tropical Medicine, all of them with their own policies, their own institutional backgrounds and ethos, but they all operate under the umbrella institutional backing of the University of London, but they're quite independent to each other. There's also another university that is larger than the University of Manchester here in the United Kingdom, and that's the Open University, but that's a fully online university. So it's certainly not a university in the more traditional sense of a campus-based university as we're used to understanding them. So as it happens, in terms of a campus-based university, we are indeed possibly the largest university here in the United Kingdom. We're a very, very reputable university, lots of world-leading research. We are very fortunate to count up to 25 Nobel Prize winners amongst our staff, or former staff, former students. Plenty of people that you would have studied over your undergraduate programs, or if you did other master's qualifications, or indeed when you studied in secondary school, you would have possibly come across many of the names that have historically been associated with our institution, from people involved in physics, chemistry, world-leading economists. We've got philosophers, we've got people in the field of literature and the wider humanities. Our most recent Nobel Prizes from this millennium are associated perhaps a bit more on the issue of medicine, or the most recent ones, Gaiman and Novoselov, who basically discovered graphene as a material, which is obviously led to a big research agenda here on material science at the University of Manchester, and so on. So quite a reputable institution with world-leading scientists and researchers, divided into 3 different very, very large faculties. A faculty of engineering, aeronautics, with obviously a faculty of medicine and life sciences, and then we've got a faculty of humanities, where Alliance Manchester Business School as a school in itself belongs to. We've got over 43,000 students at our university, and over 10,000 staff between academics and professional support employees. So again, a very, very large institution, and one as well that can also build very, very strong international links through our network of international centers. So as you may be aware of, we have global centers in Shanghai, in China, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Dubai, in addition to obviously here in Manchester, acting as a center for our professional MBAs and indeed our full-time MBA also. Very highly ranked as a university in the QS World University Ranking. So we are consistently ranked in the top 30 universities in the world, top 10 in Europe, and we're certainly also, as a program of studies, our MBA is very, very highly regarded. So for example, here in the United Kingdom, we were ranked 5th this year, 12th in Europe, and 43rd globally. And we're very, very proud of our very, very strong performance in terms of CSR and ESG issues, being the first one in the United Kingdom and the 5th globally for environmental sustainability and environmental, social and governance types issues, as we embedded in our curriculum, and to basically everything we do. So now that I'm speaking about the performance of our MBA, I'd like to, and before perhaps I give a more detailed overview about our professional MBAs here at Manchester, I'd like to ask you guys to just type in the chat box, what is your understanding of what an MBA is? Beyond the obvious, an MBA is a master's of business administration, but just use the chat functionality and let us know, type it in, what you understand an MBA to be, or what is it about? Anybody? Okay, so Joanna tells us that it's about being a better leader. Matt from Shanghai tells us that it gives us the credentials to open wider doors and opportunities. So it allows us to unlock our potential. It teaches its holders key business practices. That's all absolutely right. Anything else? So Jyotsana tells us that it allows us to network. It teaches to be better leaders and to be more confident. Absolutely. Philip tells us that it's about learning theory and practice of management and business whilst exchanging best practice with other fellow professionals and building networks. Absolutely. All this is true. But even at the higher level, what is that an MBA is about? You're giving me perhaps instances or examples of what you can get out of an MBA or different snippets of the different types of elements that you get out of an MBA. Rafa tells us that it helps us to get to a better position at work. Boniface is telling us that it's about forward thinking, solving unprecedented business problems. Absolutely. It's not always about reinventing the wheel, though, Boniface. Sometimes we certainly look at a very forward-looking approach, but we also sometimes just look at practices that are successful or failure sometimes, and we try to learn from them to become better managers and leaders ourselves. You guys are all absolutely right on all the different comments that you've actually placed on the chat box, and I would really encourage you to continue using this chat box to exchange your thoughts on what an MBA is about. But an MBA, in its most fundamental level, is a generic business and management qualification. And notice that I'm not using these words broad and generic in a pejorative sense whatsoever. Quite the opposite. It is in that broadness, it is in that generality that an MBA provides, that it actually gives its holders a lot of value. In other words, we are not making you an expert on anything. You guys are already experts. This is not a pre-experience qualification. It is what we call a post-experience qualification. So we, as most of you attending this session today, take applications from people that are quite well-seasoned individuals professionally. You have been working for a number of years. You will see in a bit when I go to give details about our programs. Generally, we'll be looking at people with a substantial level of experience. Our average age, for example, in the Global Mba is 36. So we're speaking about people that have quite a level of experience, usually also some level of managerial experience as well. And usually you guys have been advancing or progressing within your organizations, but perhaps have been pigeonholed in a very, very specific area. You might be bankers, you might work in finance, you might be people working as engineers or as computer scientists. We have plenty of project managers. We have plenty of people that work in sales in many different industries or business contexts. We have actually increasingly a number of people that come from medical and even clinical backgrounds. We have people that have worked in the military. We have people that are basically researchers. We have people from the public sector, with people that work in project management. You name it, we have it. And the reason why the vast majority of these people from literally every single walk of life come to do an MBA is simply because they've possibly just reached that glass ceiling that they find very, very difficult to break through as they try to convince their employers that perhaps they should not be pigeonholed in that very, very specific silo of expertise, that perhaps they should be considered for more commercial or more synthetic roles at the managerial or at the leadership level. That might come naturally sometimes, but the MBA as a qualification is certainly great help in that it allows you, through that broadness, through that generality, to basically support your argumentation that you understand how a business works. And this is exactly what we do in an MBA. Usually at the very beginning of an MBA, any of our professional MBAs or full-time MBA, and indeed any other MBA program that you might be considering from other institutions, so long as they're triply accredited, because that's ultimately what's being dictated or not to a certain extent by accreditation bodies, the likes of the AACSB or the Association of MBAs or EQUIS and so on. But generally, at the very beginning of the MBA, you would be taking some courses that are related to the different areas within any single business. So you'll be looking at marketing, you would be looking at operations management, you'll be looking at accounting, at finance, you'll be looking at the fundamentals of economics, you'll be also looking at courses in organizational behavior and organizational design, so organizational culture, how to manage change. You will be looking at human resource management. You'll be looking at, in essence, all the different functional areas, all the different types of departments that you may be familiarized from the own organizations that you guys work within. And once you've actually covered all those different areas and looking at the different interplays, tensions, interdependencies between those functional areas, then we actually bring them together, usually towards the middle of an MBA in the form of a strategic management course that basically gives you that helicopter view and that more holistic or synthetic view that allows you to look at the organization from above, that allows you to look at how we can actually then prepare and implement strategies at the higher level. So in other words, looking at that CEO or CFO or board level type of decision making. And it's only at that stage that the vast majority of MBAs, including our own, then allow you to tailor your journey through your choice of electives, through your choice of final capstone projects, and so on. But the point I'm trying to make here is that an MBA will not make you an expert in finance. It will not make you an expert in operations management. It will not make you an expert in marketing whatsoever. It will give you an understanding of what each one of those areas does. It will allow you to speak the language that those professionals working in those different departments in every single organizational background are using. It will allow you to understand and interpret a set of financial statements, like a balance sheet and income statement. It will allow you to look at how a marketer goes about pricing policies, how we go about segmenting our customers. It will allow you to understand how an operations manager goes about preparing or implementing better, more efficient and more effective processes. And it will allow you, in essence, to look at those interdependencies that exist at the very core of absolutely every single organizational background. And not only that, so not only you're looking at the business side of things, you're also looking at the managerial side of things. So an MBA, or at least a good MBA, will equip you with the type of skills that are expected of leaders in the 21st century. So anything from how you go about managing your time, how you go about negotiating with your employees, with peers, with suppliers, with your customers, perhaps how you go about negotiating your own salary, but also how you go about presenting in public, how you go about putting yourself forward for promotion. So it tends to have a very strong careers enhancement focus. And then certainly somebody mentioned it as part of that small exercise I asked you to do at the very beginning of this explanation when I said, what is an MBA about? Very, very importantly, the MBA will give you confidence. And I'm speaking about confidence in its traditional sense. So confident as I can stand in front of 1,000 people in a big lecture hall and be able to speak or crack up a couple of jokes very confidently. So it's not about simply being self-assured in your own abilities as a presenter, as an individual, right, in that traditional sense. But perhaps it's more confident as in being able to perhaps rely or trust others, or on the positive outcomes of future uncertainty. So being, for instance, confident about the fact that there is opportunity in change, that there is a lot of opportunity in that very uncertain world that we are having to live in. In other words, it's about being optimistic about those future opportunities. It's of little use to be very self-assured about your own abilities. If cynicism, if pessimism gets on its way, you need to be able to be very confident, very optimistic about uncertainty, to be able to make the most out of your own abilities. And this is certainly something that an MBA can provide. It tells you that there's a lot of opportunity in change. And you only need to look at the most successful managers, from Elon Musk to famous investors, to Steve Jobs, whoever you want. They are individuals that have been able to seize the opportunities, that uncertainty that a very dynamic business environment has given them. And by seizing them, they've been able to basically make the most of their own, out of their own ability. So confidence is really, really, really at the center of what we try to do in an MBA. Having looked at what an MBA is about, let me perhaps speak a bit more about the professional MBA landscape. In other words, how we go about our MBA journey. So MBAs traditionally, and by that I mean perhaps before the 1970s, 1960s, had been mainly full-time MBA programs. So in the United States, you would have had people that took 2 years out of their professional lives to pursue a full-time MBA at a leading university, or in Europe, perhaps that would have been around 12 months to 18 months. So it tended to be a bit shorter. There weren't that many MBAs, as it happens, in the rest of the world in the old days. The landscape has changed completely. So there's been a very, very wide proliferation of institutions all over the world providing full-time MBA programs. Asia is obviously coming of age, and we have top business schools all over the Far East and China, places like Hong Kong, Singapore, and so on, where there's very, very, very good quality full-time MBAs, and indeed as well in other parts of the world increasingly. But perhaps the key change has been the fact that as the MBA as a qualification has continued to gain notoriety with not only applicants, but employers all over the world, many applicants have found themselves with that desire to get an MBA, but that inability sometimes to put their lives on hold to go and study an MBA for a couple of years. People have families, people pay mortgages, people have jobs to go to, and you just cannot that easily put your life on hold to get an MBA. But that's not a problem anymore, because there's been a very, very large proliferation of modes of delivery. We tend to refer to those as professional MBAs. And there's many different types of MBAs nowadays. So we could be looking at what we call traditional executive type MBAs, where you would typically have a large percentage of face-to-face tuition, usually between 70 and 90 days over a couple of years part-time. So that might require you to go to a local university, say every weekend or every second weekend, or take a week off every month, or something like that. Now, good as they might be, the problem is that they're not that flexible, and that the fact that they require a lot of face-to-face implies that sometimes they really lock you into one specific location. So you might not be as easily able to choose the institution that you'd like to pursue your MBA in that that very, very large amount of face-to-face might make it very, very difficult. We have then the more traditional part-time MBAs, as it were, where there's still quite a significant level of face-to-face learning, perhaps not as much as an executive MBA, but certainly there's still demand on your time, again, in terms of weekend blogs or evening blogs. And again, they would dictate the location where you need to take your MBA. My apologies, because it's very related to the fact that you need to be very, very close to that institution. You cannot be traveling basically every week or every second week. More flexible approaches. You might have distance MBAs with a very, very small amount of face-to-face. Great if what you want is 3 letters at the end of your name, and likewise with traditional online or fully online MBAs, but perhaps not as good an opportunity for you to engage with academics, or indeed to use it as a platform to network with other students. And certainly technology has actually facilitated new ways of networking with other individuals, virtually, online. We are obviously speaking to you over Zoom, and obviously the pandemic has actually perhaps even made it a bit easier for us to do so. But I think it's fair to say, and that's perhaps where our key USP here is at Manchester, that face-to-face networking is perhaps a bit more useful and tends to be seen as more added value for the vast majority of our students and our applicants. And this is certainly then where, as I said, our strength lies. So at Alliance Manchester Business School, we try to find a niche that caters for that desire for increased flexibility, that allows you guys to juggle all those balls. So in other words, continue with your professional advancement whilst you continue with your own personal obligations and your families and so on, whilst not having to compromise on your desire to obtain a world-class MBA. So what we do is we actually structure our professional MBAs around a set of workshop residentials. Ours is what we call a blended learning suite of MBA programs. And by blended, we mean we actually combine both online and face-to-face elements. The vast majority of our modules will be delivered over a period of around 6 months. They would start online. They would be supported by our virtual learning environment. There would be online lectures, virtual office hours, an ability to interact with our professors and other peer students. And indeed, halfway through the semester, typically, you would attend a workshop either in Manchester or in Shanghai, in Hong Kong, Singapore, or in Dubai for usually around 3 very, very intense days where you actually meet other fellow students and academics, and you basically consolidate and apply all the learning that you've actually carried out before the actual face-to-face residentials. After the face-to-face residential, usually amounting to around 24-25 hours per course typically. So in essence, very similar to the amount of face-to-face time you would be getting even in a full-time MBA. Just think about your college days, your undergraduate, you would have typically had semesters of around 12-13 weeks, 2-hour lecture per class per week. Just do the sums is basically what is coming to with our workshop. But anyway, after the workshops, it would take around a month and a half or 2 months for more online learning, and it would culminate with the submission of a final individual assignment. That's typically the case. What we would normally do is we actually put a couple of those workshops together, so that, for instance, at every single workshop residential, you're just taking perhaps 1 week of work. And in the case, for instance, of our Global MBA, you would be doing that 6 times over the period of 2 years. But in our Global Executive MBA, which is shorter, it's 18 months, you would be taking workshop residentials 5 times, perhaps slightly longer. But what that means is that you're not going to class or to our institution every weekend or every 2 weeks, but that you're actually really concentrating your face-to-face interaction in residential blocks. I'm not going to lie about this. The residential blocks are incredibly intense. We just finished, for example, the ones we had in Manchester over the Easter period, but they're an incredibly rewarding experience, full of learning, full of networking of opportunities. And it's certainly also a great chance for you basically to step out of your normal life for, say, 6 days and just focus completely on yourself, on your own career advancement and your own MBA stories. A really, really, really rewarding opportunity. So one of them obviously is the USP, our flexibility, which is accomplished through this blended approach that we take to teaching and learning, and that allocation of face-to-face time through what we call workshop residentials that will amount to up to 32 days. Say, for example, if you do our Global Executive MBA, or up to 17 days if you want something a lot more flexible, like our Kelly Manchester Global MBA. But also, our key USP is the fact that we're incredibly global. So I mentioned the fact that we operate in international locations in Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, in addition to here in Manchester. So that means that we fly out our academics to teach you wherever you are in the world. And not only that, but then even once you actually get to your elective stage in the second year, you can choose to go to any other international center. So if you're living in China, you can come to Manchester or to Dubai. If you're living in Dubai, again, you can go to Singapore, Hong Kong, or Manchester to take your workshops and so on. And that allows us for that absolutely amazing richness of learning, where you get to network with people from literally all over the world. All our workshops are kept at a very small number of students, of a maximum 30 students. So whilst we actually have a number of intakes per year, we take lots of students to be able to have that networking spillover effects. We at the same time make sure that all your learning opportunities are kept to very small numbers, so that we can actually then get you to debate, to basically network, and to do a lot of group work with your peers while you're studying at your workshop. So a great opportunity. So let us now focus on the different options that we have in terms of our professional MBAs. So we have what we would think as the most popular of our options. It's our well-known part-time Global MBA, which is usually completed in around 24 months, so basically 2 years, with 6 workshop residentials that you can take anywhere in the world, so either here in Manchester, Hong Kong, Singapore, Shanghai, or Dubai, and which is aimed at candidates with, at the very least, 3 years of professional experience. And we would be looking for some form of managerial experience, whether that is managing people, managing significant projects, or significant budgets. Notice that when I'm saying at least 3 years of professional experience, that's a very bare minimum. Our average is considerably higher. As I said, on average, our Global MBA students would be around 35, 36. So we're speaking about people that on average will have around 15 to 20 years experience under their belt. There's also some accelerated routes for holders of finance or accounting professional qualifications like ACCA or CPA or CIMA and so on, who get an exemption on the accounting and finance course, and obviously can complete their programs in 18 months. The third box you can see here is what we call the Kelly Manchester Global MBA, and is one that we offer in partnership with the Kelly School of Business, part of Indiana University in the United States, and allows you to earn 2 degrees as part of one joint program of studies. So we're in essence combining our Global MBA with the Kelly Direct MBA from Indiana University to be able to get you to earn 2 degrees, one from the United States and one from the United Kingdom. And again, with very similar class profiles to our standard Global MBA program. Finally, and this is our newest addition to the portfolio, we have the Manchester Global Executive MBA. This is a program that is focused on the most senior of our applicants. So we're looking at people with very significant managerial experience. Anything from people that are already at C-suite level, so people that are at board level, or people that are nearing and have the ambitions, at the very least, to be getting to board level positions in the near to midterm future. One of the difference between our Manchester Global Executive MBA, or GEMBA, as we tend to refer to it, and our more standard Manchester Global MBA, is that our GEMBA is what we call a closed cohort of a maximum of 30 students. We don't take in too many students. We keep it very, very, very small. And whilst we warranty a very, very, very cherry-picked an international cohort, it's perhaps slightly less flexible than our global MBA, in that we dictate the fact that you need to go and travel to different centers around the world as a closed cohort. So in other words, you get to know incredibly well that cohort that you're working with, whereas in the Manchester Global MBA, you always have the flexibility to slow down the program, to go to different centers of your own choosing. However, there's a larger number of students. Okay, so let me zoom in each and every program pathway in our suite of professional MBA. So first of all, our more popular, as I said, Manchester Global MBA, and I'm saying more popular because it is the program where we take in a larger number of students. Typically, we might be taking around 300 students to 350 every semester. So that is every January and every July. Those students will be taken from all our international centers, in Shanghai, in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Dubai, or in Manchester. And again, it's a very, very flexible program with a very considerable amount of face-to-face teaching, and very, very flexible. Remember, we were looking at those core units in year one, followed by Capstone strategy course at the beginning of the second year, and then your ability to tailor your journey on the second year via electives and your final Capstone project. We have a very diverse multicultural network. So we have over 68 nationalities represented in the program. And as I said earlier, we have people that are on average 36 years of age, with considerable working experience and considerable as well mid to senior managerial experience. You've got 3 electives as part of the course, plus 1 additional complementary elective even when you finish the program. So a very, very flexible and incredibly international program. Looking at the structure, I think I've already commented on the fact that it's a bit of a blended program where you take some courses, or you take part of your courses online, part of your courses face-to-face. On your first year, following a pre-MBA stage where you can you have some pre-sessional sessions on operations management, on accounting, on marketing, and so on. You take classes on leading and managing the global environment, so basically organizational behavior, organizational design, HR, financialization, and so on, as well as having an initial class on economics of strategy, looking at game theory and interdependence. Your first class on operations and marketing that looks at the interdependencies between those 2 functional areas that are central to every single organization, and then obviously your business accounting and finance course, which you take in your second semester. Then as you move on to your second year, you tailor your journey, again, through a blend of online and face-to-face elements, by taking your Capstone strategy course in addition to 3 electives and your live business project. Okay. As I said, our newest addition to the portfolio is our Manchester Global Executive MBA, or as we refer to our Mba, which is about trying to provide you with the opportunity to be part of a small cohort, maximum 30 students from all over the world that come together for 5 global residentials that take place at our different international centers. So for example, if any of you were to be joining our Global Executive MBA, you would be starting our Mba in Manchester in July. You would then go to Singapore in September, October time. You would then go to Dubai in Easter next year. Then this time next year, or July next year, you would be coming back to Manchester to do your strategy course and the introduction to your business inquiry before you actually then get to choose where you want to take the electives. So the electives, you could take them in Manchester, you could take them in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in China, in Dubai, literally wherever you want, really. Okay, so very, very, very interesting pathway that allows you basically to be part of a very, very senior cohort of basically cherry-picked individuals, which, as I said earlier, are either already at board level or nearing board level, or with the very explicit ambition to make it to board level. I'm hearing a lot of noise, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to close the window next to me. My apologies. Sorry about that. That's one of the downsides of delivering live webinars. Sometimes you're never in control of any noise that might actually happen outside. So in any case, as I said, in this case, we would be looking at 32 days minimum of face-to-face teaching. And notice that I'm saying minimum, because ultimately it will depend on the on your choice of elective. Some of the electives, for example, advanced strategic management, rather than being a 3-day, might be a 5-day elective. And so, for example, if you wanted to take our class on big data analytics here in Manchester, again, it would be slightly more than 3 days. And in addition to that, obviously, you get one extra complementary elective once you complete. So in essence, you get quite a bit more of face-to-face. Our average age, as you can see, it's slightly higher than that of our Global MBA, and we don't take more than 30 students every single January or every single July. So we're keeping it very, very, very contained. And because we want this specific cohort that travels around the world to really bond and get to know each other and network very, very closely, what we do is we make sure that they stay together at each one of those workshop residentials. So we make sure that they're all at the same hotel and so on. Great, great, great opportunity, perhaps a bit less flexible than the Global MBA. So there are plenty of very senior individuals that would be eligible to do our Global Executive MBA that still choose our standard Global MBA simply because it's a bit more flexible, and they might require the flexibility because they might just want to study from a location. But nonetheless, if you have an opportunity, if you're eligible and you're accepted to the Global Executive MBA, it's an absolutely transformational, life-changing opportunity as well. Okay, so the structure doesn't differ that much from our Global MBA, other than the fact that, again, we dictate where you take the different courses, and the fact that rather than being 24 months is 18 months. And also the fact that rather than having 3 electives, you only have 2 electives, because there are 2 courses that are core and specific to our Global Executive MBA. So they've been tailored for that very specific audience. That is to be specific, the digital economy class, which you can otherwise take as an elective if you're doing the Global MBA, or indeed a class that we've actually put together with Mba students in mind on the reflective executive, where we look at the rudiments of managerial and leading and leadership decision-making processes, right? Which again, our Global MBAs can take a version of this course by the name of Management in Practice in the Global MBA. But here we're tailoring it a bit more for our Mbas. Notice what's important, that rather than having a 1-year-long project, we call the Life Business Project in the Global MBA, Mbas would be taking a 6-month project, which we call the Business Inquiry, and that allows us then to compress the duration of the program from 24 months to 18 months. If you're in a hurry to get your MBA, that's great. But again, particularly that second year is quite an intense one. So we really demand full commitment to the Mba program and to the cohort that we're trying to put together. And finally, I already mentioned that we also offer our Global MBA program offered in partnership with the Kelley School of Business, part of Indiana University in the United States, a very reputable institution, actually very, very similar to University of Manchester and Alliance Manchester Business School in terms of its ranking reputation and its research power and so on. So very, very like-minded institutions in many respects. And what we actually do is we have combined elements of our global MBA programs with elements of the Kelley Direct online MBA at the Kelley School of Business to create a joint program of studies that will allow you to earn 2 different MBAs. So you will have 2 different MBAs, 2 different parchments in essence, if you earn them, that will allow you to basically market yourself as having an MBA from Europe or the United Kingdom and an MBA from the United States. Obviously, because half of the program is delivered through the Kelley Direct MBA, which is online, that means that there's slightly less face-to-face teaching. So in essence, that makes the Kelley Manchester Global MBA our most flexible one. Great for those of you who might be wanting to leverage MBAs from Europe and the United States, perhaps because of your own professional circumstances, or because you just want to open doors, or perhaps simply because you just want to gain access to 2 world-leading institutions with everything that comes with it, 2 sets of faculties, 2 sets of electives, 2 sets of alumni networks, 2 sets of career services, and so on. So basically, we're multiplying everything by 2 in terms of resources. Okay, so as you will see, our Kelley Manchester Global MBA, again, it's divided into a first year that looks at the fundamentals of business, not too different to what we do with our Global MBA or our Global Executive MBA, with the only difference that some of the courses are delivered by us in a blended format with any Global MBAs, which you can take anywhere you want in the world, again, either in Manchester, in China, Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Dubai, wherever you want it. And the other half of the program, depicted in red here, is delivered online by the Kelley School of Business. And then the second year is quite focused, in addition to looking at strategic management and at your final project, at taking a number of electives, both from Alliance Manchester Business School and from the Kelley School of Business. And this is actually quite interesting because we require you to start the program at Bloomington in Indiana. So the whole cohort comes together at the very beginning of the program for 5 days. And then you are incredibly free to use the flexibility that the online components of our blended program afford you to take all other courses literally wherever you want in the world or at any of our international centers. One of the electives that the Indiana University, so the Kelley side of things, offers is the public management course, which is actually offered out of the Washington, D.C. campus that Kelley have, and that allows you to go to Washington, D.C. as well for up to 5 days if you wish. That's an elective ultimately, and meet Congress people, senators, and people working for the World Bank and so on. Really, really interesting elective. Okay. So having got to this point, I'm just going to pass it over to my colleague, Anthony, which will speak to you a bit more about admissions requirements, and I will be fielding some questions once we complete this. Thank you.
Thanks, Xavier. That's really interesting so far. So I hope you'll agree that's been really interesting so far. And thank you for your comments. And it's nice to see it's been an interactive session. So very similar to a real life lecture or workshop in terms of that interactivity. As you can see, we've managed to bring the learning environment alive, despite it not being face-to-face. But yeah, as we've been saying, you've got the best of both worlds. You will have the face-to-face contact and then the blended learning workshops. So yeah, that's been great to see that everybody has been interacting with the session so far. I know Ekaterina has kindly been typing a few answers to your questions, as we appreciate it is a very personalized journey that you would go on. So of course you're going to have very personalized questions, which is why we do kind of have that Ekaterina in the background diligently typing the answers. I hope that potentially Ekaterina is going to share a few questions in a few seconds, but at this point, I'll just kind of cover the fees and discounts and scholarships, as you can already see on this slide. So the Global MBA and the Global Finance Accelerator Program, the best thing to do would be to talk to your local center. Xavier has already mentioned how we deliver this program all over the world. So in the UK, obviously, we'll have a different fee level to other centres around the world, and that's something that your centre can talk to or more about on an individual basis. As a nice to have follow-up, I will obviously send an email to everyone and then make sure that you have all the relevant information for which centre is going to be in contact with you and your kind of next point of contact, if you like. So yeah, in terms of the kind of next steps that are imminent, and if you are seriously thinking about this July entry, then of course there is still time to apply. So that's the main thing to be reassured of. And the application deadline is the 30th of May. So you've got just over a month, essentially. So again, I don't know where people are at in terms of their research. Perhaps some people are very well informed, and maybe this webinar has been a good way of answering the kind of finer detail or giving them context as to which program is best for them. So as Xavier kind of already mentioned at the beginning, we have the Executive MBA essentially for our most senior applicants, our most senior candidates. And if that's something that you think might suit your profile, might be a good fit with you, then of course, that's essentially for you to kind of recognize that in yourself, in your own profile. But in conjunction with our team, the recruitment team, we're also very happy to kind of give you, CV review, LinkedIn review, and essentially just kind of make sure that you've got the best tailored advice for your own individual circumstances. So what's best for you personally and professionally, and thinking about your career goals ultimately. So yeah, I think right at the moment you can see what the steps in the application are. And there's one, if you could just click on the next button, Xavier, please. I think it's going to give a big list of entry requirements. But the thing to think about is what we've said from the beginning. It's a minimum of 3 years of work experience. And as I've now alluded to, we're more than happy to kind of get to know you on an individual level, have calls, and if you do want to send your CV to us, then like I said, I'm going to send a follow-up email to everyone. So you'll have my address, but just so you have the general email address, if anybody is super keen to send something today, then obviously you can do. And the email address would be mba at manchester.ac.uk. So that's mba at manchester.ac.uk. So the main thing to think about is really just the additional experience level that we would need for the Global Executive MBA. And generally speaking, everybody would be interviewed. One thing I haven't mentioned, which was on the previous slide, is about the scholarships. And of course, that is something that is a very nice to have and obviously rewarding talent. So the scholarships are available up to 25% of the Global Executive MBA fees, and there's up to $15,000 for the Kelly Manchester Global MBA. And again, that's something that on our call we can very much kind of give you some indication of the kind of competitiveness of your application. And I guess that's one of the great things about taking the time to really engage with our team, is that's the kind of personalized approach that we take, and we can be pretty candid with you about how competitive your application is and whether or not it's the right time for you to be applying now or in the future. So yeah, I think that's covered most things. I've mentioned the deadline for the applications. One of the things that we would probably just want to flag up with you before we go to the questions is essentially we've got another event following up this session, which is going to be on the 12th of May. And that's when we're running a student and alumni panel. And it's going to be in conversation with our head of recruitment, Chris Healy. So that's available to register now on the website, and it'd be a very good follow-up session to today's event. So look out for that if you haven't already seen that on the website or haven't registered for it. It's on the 12th of May. So we're really looking forward to that event. Hopefully see as many of you there as possible. Has anybody picked out any questions at this point in time?
Yeah, so thanks for that, Anthony. So I've been answering questions as we went through the session. Probably a couple of questions, Xavier, that will be helpful to get your input on. So the first one is talking about the business projects on our professional MBA. So these are candidates probably looking at our full-time program, which is obviously very project rich, versus some of the professional MBA programs. So just to get a bit of your input on what a live business project would look like and what the value of that project would be to a professional MBA student.
Yeah, so our live business project, certainly in the Global MBA being perhaps the professional MBA pathway with the largest number of students, and perhaps the one that trigger more questions, is a capstone project that sees all our students come together in a group, normally around 4 or 5 students in the second year, to try to apply all the learning of their MBA from the whole journey, in essence. So usually we actually ask them to engage themselves into a very practical project that might be looking at feasibility studies. So say, for example, market entry studies. Should a company enter a new location? Should it enter into a new product market? We might be looking, for example, at and there's increasingly, I would say, more entrepreneurial type projects. Many of our students are looking to get into setting up their own business ventures, and they actually use the opportunity of the live business project as a chance, really, to test out, to really articulate their thoughts in the form of a business plan. Obviously, all our projects are fully supervised by an expert that is allocated by us, and that obviously gives the students a great opportunity to test out those ideas, many times with academics that they've already encountered throughout the program. So the live business project in the Global MBA is actually made up of 2 key parts, because it's a 1-year project. In your second year, what you do in the very first year is you get some training on research methodology, on how to put together business plans, on how to go about putting a proposal, which we will then ultimately use a foundation upon which to allocate supervision. That will actually happen in the second part. So the last 6 months of the project, where you will actually then really engage into putting together that report and a presentation. Many of our students decide to work with real clients. So it is up to the students to seek out these clients. Sometimes it's with the organization that one of the students is working with, who might be looking for one specific project, or it might be with another company that the group of students might actually seek out themselves as an opportunity, perhaps to look at a different business function or a different industry altogether. And many of them have actually ended up being published in academic journals. Many of them have actually been used up as an opportunity, perhaps for students to populate their CVs, or indeed to change their own careers. So yes, a great opportunity to use the live business project for something that will be tangible and that will actually transform your own career.
Great, thanks for that. I'm aware of time, so maybe one final question for you. So this is something I've picked up separately, but some of the candidates have bringing up the same issue of the relevance of management experience when being considered for admission onto the program, and how is that valued in relation to maybe other professional experience that's more sector specific, like legal experience? How do you view candidates? So the chances of admission?
Yeah, so obviously we're looking for people that have some level of management experience, but we do tend to take quite an open-ended definition of what management is. So obviously there's that traditional management experience that looks at managing people, but we can also consider the management of substantial enough budgets, or the management of substantial projects in lieu of that management of people, if you will. I think ultimately one thing that is incredibly important to us in the MBA is to make sure that our cohorts are incredibly diverse. So we don't just want people that are coming from the exact same industry. We don't want people that are coming with a finance background, or with a HR background, or with a marketing background. That would defeat the purpose of having this general and broad business and management qualification. So we are quite, how would I put it, at admissions committee, we're quite adamant to see as diverse a pool of applicants as possible. We tend to get lots of people that come from finance. We tend to get lots of engineers. We tend to get lots of project managers. We tend to get a lot of people that work in finance or in banking. That is the quintessential background that we tend to get in MBAs, and it really reflects the fact that there's plenty of jobs in those areas. But this is why we tend to perhaps keep a closer eye on those backgrounds that perhaps are a bit less common in MBA. So you're speaking about legal, you're speaking perhaps about, as I mentioned earlier, we have a few professional sports people that, again, in much the same way as the engineer is actually looking for a generalist business management qualification, a professional sports person might be saying, right, my career will finish in my early 30s or my mid 30s. I want to continue having a career or start a new career in business or in management. So it's, again, doing exactly what an MBA is supposed to be doing, with people that come from the military as well, people that have been serving their countries from a military perspective, perhaps again into their early or mid 30s, that decide then to do an MBA again because they're going to have a second career after their life. And increasingly, we are getting a lot more people that are, for example, coming from healthcare. We are getting quite substantial numbers, and it's not just our MBA, but it's across the piece, because I'm speaking to our competitors, they're also witnessing this. Quite a few people that come from healthcare, anything from pharma to perhaps more clinical backgrounds. We have, for example, here in the United Kingdom, plenty of people coming from the NHS, administrators, but even clinical professionals that really want to make sure that the healthcare service is actually working more efficiently, and they're actually trying to bring the learning from business and management to try to make themselves more efficient and more effective at the way they actually make decisions. That is becoming more and more popular. So yes, basically, to answer your question, we tend to be quite open to looking at perhaps what you would consider to be less traditional MBA backgrounds.
Fantastic, thank you for that. So yes, I think that's it with the big questions. So we will leave it for there. We are just in time, so glad to see we've not run over. Thank you so much for your time, Xavier, and for all your insights. And as Anthony mentioned, thank you everyone for your time, and we certainly will be in touch with you with a recording of this session and an opportunity to ask more questions. So thank you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.